Hello and welcome to my little workshop. My name is Patrick and today it's about these parts here. The ready-to-install wall niche of the Slotfix from the company Borado. I want to show it to you today and what you can do with it. Enjoy watching. Anyone who has followed my channel a bit over the last few years knows that I have installed such niches in projects again. In most cases, a custom solution made from drywall panels is used. That means I make my cutouts from the gypsum walls and construct with profiles, or boards or slats. Then I create my own solution into the wall. When you've been active on YouTube for a while, cooperation requests also keep coming in via email. There are always astonishing requests being made. In most cases, it is indeed within my field, so many. Lasers, for example, are offered to me to showcase on my channel. I have tested one before. However, I believe yes, lasers, you can do that once. But the 15th laser test video would probably be too boring for me now. There are also always quite dubious requests, like men's handbags, for example. Yes, I found that quite amusing. Or what I recently had, again, was for razors. I have no idea how they come up with that. No clue. These are just the kinds of requests that keep reaching us, and that's why the selection is important to me. What do I want to show you here on the channel? Or what is especially important to me in the field of drywall construction? Because that's what this is supposed to be about, drywall construction. And it should help you and help me progress. And that's how this contact came about. With the company Borado, which produces this wall and this ready-to-install niche, the Slotfix. By the way, you saw Mr. Braun. He is the developer of these niches. I'll show it to you in more detail later. We had a phone call, a long phone call, and it turned out that he developed these parts due to his own needs on the construction site. I found that quite interesting because it shows how the path can be. Yes, we craftsmen have especially we craftsmen often deal with getting products in our hands and thinking, yes, you could do it this way or that way. But now someone has actually come along who said, okay, I don't want to just cobble it together anymore. I'll design something and bring it to the market. And I think that's a great thing. And that's why I took a closer look at this niche, and over the past few weeks, I tested it in various projects. Where can it be used? I've already made videos for you about it. There's much more to come. So I would like to introduce this niche to you now, with the thought in mind that you will really write down in the comments below what you think of these niches. Purpose, possible applications, suggestions for improvement. Is it good? Is it bad? Is there a need for development? Everything you think about it, I would like to gather in these comments because there is a reason for it. Mr. Braun will also be able to provide you with direct answers to your questions here on the channel. This way you have direct contact and can perhaps improve or change one thing or another with the developer of this wall meadow here on the channel. Get ideas, solutions, and suggestions for improvement. Anything you can think of under this video. Write it down and get direct contact with the developer. I think that's a great thing. And I think you don't find that on many other channels. That's an idea that has gradually developed over time. In many project tests or product tests, I always had the problem that I, of course, also have suggestions for improvement, or even criticism, or sometimes just praise. That can also be the case. But you never get to the people who really developed these things. You just can't reach them. It doesn't get through or is delayed. You don't get any feedback and think, why am I even saying anything? And that's what I wanted to change here on this channel, and wanted to give you the opportunity to actively work on this product. I can tell you how it was for me when I installed the first niches and encountered the first points where I thought maybe we could consult again somehow. And then I could directly write to Mr. Braun and within 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour, depending on how it fit into his schedule, I would get feedback, sometimes even solution suggestions, solution approaches that were then further developed. I'll get to that later. Different wall constructions. Where can I install it? I got my answers directly and it wasn't just dismissed. Like, that's just how it is and that's it. But there was really direct feedback on what can be done. And I really liked that. And that's why I think we should use this opportunity here on the channel to actively develop further with the use of such things. This is just symbolic, I would say here, for many other developers perhaps, but this direct contact with us users, with us craftsmen, I think would significantly facilitate the platform here. And that's why for you now, the first installations, trial installations here in the workshop, because I just wanted to demonstrate it to you, I've set up a sample wall here. And we will now directly install the strawberry line. So first I want to show you what possibilities we actually have. Here is the classic soap dish, which is often used in the wet area, is 30 by 30 adapted to the tiles, 30 by 30 in internal dimensions, and 10 cm in installation depth. 10 centimeters and approximately 30 by 30, like. The material is a hard foam. I won't mention the name now. It is a hard foam with a coating commonly known in the bathroom area, often used. The material thickness is 12.5, matching the standard material thicknesses, gypsum boards. They are available in 30 by 30, but they are also available in 30 by 60. For those who prefer something a bit larger, chooses this variant. These are also the most common tile sizes, including an additional shelf that I can adjust individually in height. I find that quite interesting because I also have large shampoo bottles and smaller ones. If the family is a bit larger, it is certainly practical to have a larger wall niche. I can of course arrange it more. Do I perhaps have even more space? That always depends a bit on how the tile pattern looks. Yes, and also how much space I have in the shower. This shelf is quite super practical, I don't know. I haven't installed it horizontally in the separation yet. It would be possible, but personally I wouldn't do it in this case. I could also consider installing a longer strip horizontally here. Anyone who wants something like this can certainly make it from a material they get themselves at a hardware store and then glue it in here with a mounting adhesive. A big advantage compared to my wall niches that I've shown you so far here on the channel, which were made of drywall, is the ceiling. I wasn't really aware before what it actually means for the tiler afterward when he also has to seal my drywall niches. And this is the huge advantage of these niches. They are already sealed. All the corners are waterproofed with grout. The material itself is already waterproof. And that actually brings the enormous time savings in comparison. Now to a niche made of drywall. Of course, I can make this box out of drywall, no question. Everything is doable, but the real time savings actually come robustly only then, through the coating that is through the tiler when he cleans this niche. Were we not aware of this at all? Of course, a point that must be considered, which I also want to show you, is the installation manual included here, showing how the whole thing is assembled. Also available in different languages. It's really well thought out and certainly expanded gradually. What else do we have as a third option? We have the same one in a narrower format. as I'll show it again with the shelf insert. Also in the 60 format. With a clear width of 13.8 mil. What is this intended for? There is also an intermediate floor, and it is intended, for example, for a toilet roll. Then I can put it in here, can make my storage over there, and can also place a toilet brush down here. Yes, I also found that a very interesting solution. And of course, I had to test it out a little bit directly. Had to test it, but more on that later. That's just a brief introduction to the products. Here again, a cross-section of this WC niche. The toilet paper holder. You can especially also adjust these niches in size as well. The material can be easily cut with a utility knife and then reassembled with mounting adhesive. And so I can of course create any size I need. Adjust on site. The set is delivered in a neat package, including mounting materials for the wall niche. If you want the whole thing illuminated, you can also order an LED lighting. Additionally, I'll show that briefly. This is what it looks like. Suitable for damp rooms, IP68. 68, a flexible LED strip, which is mounted in the track here and then covered with a cover. But we will cover that in a separate video. The whole thing is also transformer operated. Of course, everything necessary is included with the mounting materials. I will make a separate video about that for you. So, I have prepared the sample wall here. The standard profiles I use are the 75. I have also installed them in this wall here. However, with an installation depth of 10 cm, I can of course not use 75 profiles. Even if there are 2 layers of plaster on top, it is not feasible with a 75 profile. That means I would have to use at least a BOM 100 profile so that I can install this niche in a standard stud wall. However, I can certainly accommodate it in an installation wall that consists of 2 shells. Or in a shower partition wall or in a knee wall, I can wonderfully install this niche. Here now as a sample wall, these 75 profiles. I personally believe that it does not in any way whatsoever detract from the overall installation in any conceivable manner. I could already allocate the space for the niche when preparing the stud wall. A sign. I could position the profiles as I need them. However, this is usually not the case for me, as the walls are already finished. And when the tiler comes, I have to determine the height properly together with him. If it is going to be tiled, it could also be that I simply coat it differently, like plastering or filling. All of that is possible. The substrate is absolutely suitable for that. With a niche made of drywall, of course, filling would be significantly less labor intensive because here I also have to fill the sides. Yes, that is a bit more labor intensive, but as a decorative element, I can also wonderfully use it in a wallpapered or painted wall. For that, I just have to fill it. Let's just assume that my wall is already finished. I simply take this. Just take out the binder. And cover this wall with 2 layers. Gypsum boards, thickness 12.5 mm. 1. 2. So, and then then screw it in. Of course, I can also install this niche in a simply covered wall. There will probably be an extra video showing that as well. Here, however, I want to show you the installation in a standard drywall. And for me, a standard drywall is always one-sided, covered with 2 layers of gypsum. So now I simply fix it with 4 screws, just so it doesn't fall over, securely and safely. How do I now install such a niche? I am lucky here that there is no stud behind it. Sometimes you just have to be lucky. Of course, it might be that here the tiler or the builder wants the niche in a position where there is a stud profile in the wall. Then, of course, I have to cut it out later when cutting out the gypsum boards. Cut out. But since we are lucky here, we don't have a stud there. If there is a possibility and I install something where such a stud is present, then I will film that separately for you as well. The tile pattern is important when positioning the niche. So it would be important to me, yes, for a tile niche or a shampoo niche of 30 by 30, I would really like it, for it to fit exactly with the tiles. The tiler usually determines the heights before he starts tiling. If I have a walk-in shower, then I have to measure everything differently than if I had a shower tray here. Then of course he has to go a bit further down into the floor. That's why I can't really determine the position of the niche. It's important that the owner coordinates this with the tiler. He usually places a few tiles on the floor, aligns a few together, and then measures his dimensions to see approximately where he will end up with the heights. That's how I've observed it. Feel free to correct me if that's not the case. And then the height is determined exactly. Of course, I also have a bit of leeway here, of course. Thank you very much. As I have already discussed with Mr. Braun on the phone, he will make them. He will also correct me if that's not the case. I believe a bit larger. Also, have them produced so that when tiling from 30 to 60 or so, 30 cm tiles, I have some leeway. So I don't have to set the positioning exactly to the millimeter. So now I had to take a short break for organizational reasons. Now my lapel microphone isn't working anymore. I'm trying it now with the internal microphone and I hope you can understand me quite well. How do we proceed now? With the installation of the wall mixer? First, of course, determine the position. I'm just saying now. Once I know my position, I place my niche upside down on the wall and align it as straight as possible and mark the outer edge on all 4 sides. That's where it should go. Now I need to cut out the top layer. For this flange, how do I do that best? Everyone has their own methods. I quite like using this small oscillating multi-tool or this small handheld circular saw. I don't need them too often, but especially for drywall work where it's just about 12.5mm gypsum or even 25mm solid construction panels, it's absolutely sufficient. I've already preset it to the measure of approximately 12.5 minitint, so that I carefully and precisely cut as little as possible into the lower layer, ensuring that only the necessary amount is removed. This way I can still move it back and forth a bit, align it again. And now we have to work through the second layer by subtracting this measure from it. These are all around 3.7. We will mark this now and then you can cut it out here as well. To avoid having to measure everything here, I simply have a strip, cut to the width, and use this as a guide to mark my cutouts. And now I can wonderfully cut out the second layer. I can also do this with the Multimaster. Cat flap. I also like to smooth the edge here. It's not absolutely necessary, but it's pleasing to the eye. Let's briefly talk about the installation of the wall niche. When it's positioned like this, it's intended to be secured from behind. By attaching this niche with the roof batten here, I'll show you from the other side. This is how the niche should be secured. Now, my little tip. What if I want to work with this separate lighting here? And if it's mounted from above and might need wiring or anything else, I wouldn't fix the batten at the top here, but rather on the side. This way I keep the upper area free for potential future lighting. I simply attach the roof batten at the back. I could also use something else for this. I could use a metal profile. That wouldn't be a problem either. This is just a sample wall. How you screw it on site always depends on your materials. This is just for demonstration purposes. We'll also do one on the other side. That's why I'm doing it this way now. Now I'm using these plates and can screw them in here. Normally. I would even go into the corner here. This way the plate presses a bit more into the material, and this joint, this shear as well, is also additionally secured a bit. I forgot one thing. Beforehand, I should also, in this area, seal everything additionally with assembly adhesive. This increases the stability and the tightness, of course. But since this is just a sample wall, I'm screwing it back on without assembly adhesive. The wall niche is now actually ready for the tiler. The sealing in the inner area is already done, which would not be the case with my drywall niche. This is truly an effective solution to speed up the process. This is, of course, probably not as relevant for the private customer who builds a niche once as it is for the craftsman who installs 100 of these things a year. And also takes on the tiling work at the same time, as many drywallers do. I, by the way, do not. For them, it is certainly an advantage. In larger projects, it makes sense if I have already sealed it here, ready and complete. And that's all on that. I can, of course, also simply rework it with plaster. And in this case, I would now apply mesh here. I will, of course, also show that. In this case, I recommend this Gytex tape. First, of course, remove the dust. Also here, it's best to always moisten these joints with water a bit. Brush, and then apply the Gytex. This increases the stability. You don't have to cut it with a utility knife. You can simply use the spatula for that and apply the spatula. And it can also be torn, even if it doesn't look like it. But using the knife is of course also possible. And now I could, if I wanted to, simply plaster and fill this niche. I can insert corner pieces here, form nice sharp edges, and I'm done. So it can be used in many ways. I could now also, if I wanted to, even put additional parts into this niche. One is included with the large niche. It doesn't necessarily have to be so thick for small items that I just want to place here. Yes, but you never know what might be desired. And therefore, I am of course very flexible in that regard. Yes, here again is the lighting that I can optionally order. I always find that very nice. Working with this indirect lighting, I can incorporate it, or if I just want to use it for baking, it is installed from above. I will show that again in separate videos. We'll go into that in more detail. I'll also show you the niche from the back now. This is how it looks. Here you can also see quite well that a 75 profile wouldn't be sufficient for such a wall niche. And here I have now space to also install my lighting. Of course, when installing into an existing wall, you always have to be careful not to damage any cables, which can certainly happen. So let's briefly talk about the price of this niche. I think it's quite interesting, especially when making it out of drywall, where the material is probably already on site, which then doesn't cost much. That only the time is then invested. But if I later have to seal this drywall niche and have to pay the tiler for it, then the situation probably looks quite different. Of course, everyone has to weigh that for themselves. Does it make sense or not? Sense. As far as I know, these corners in drywall all need to be specially sealed. The material, the time. If I calculate it through and would also have to pay the tiler, I don't know if I would really be cheaper than here now with this finished niche. But you are welcome to write something about it in the comments below, also regarding the price. I think it's always quite interesting to weigh it against each other a bit. How does the private customer who builds it for themselves see it? What does it look like for the private customer who has to pay the craftsman for it, which might not be a bad aspect either? How would I see it as the client? Do I commission it with the finished wall niche and then later let the tiler simply tile over it? Yes, we would just have to calculate that. It would certainly be interesting to know what you think about it. Feel free to write that down in the comments below. That would definitely be very interesting for Mr. Braun as well.